It's a strict work. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanachhalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Tadamayam Dadati Supadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Saranalita Shri Vishakhanvitam He Krishna Karana Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrinda Vanishwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Krishna Paradhanaya Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Krishna Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bhakam Lede Yat Kripatamaham Vinde Shri Guru Dindaranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Hare Krishna. So thank you for joining. We are continuing our discussion of the beautiful Chaitanya Charitamrita. We have completed the discussion of the Balya Lila of the Lord up to the age of 5. And we are about to begin chapter 15 today, which is entitled the Pauganda Lila. So the different stages of the life, not just of the Lord, but in general, for all human beings. The Balya age is considered to be from birth up to around 5 years. From the 5th year onwards, up to the age of 10, is considered Pauganda. Now, Pauganda, first 5 years is like almost baby. You can call Balya as baby. Pauganda means one is not yet a teen or a young boy, but nor is one a baby. It's still a small child, Pauganda, 5 to 10. We discussed how the Balya Lila of the Lord concluded. Anybody remembers what was the last event that we discussed, the major event that we discussed, which was the transition from the Balya Lila to Pauganda Lila? Who has heard the class carefully? Sorry, I'm putting you to test. But this is your own self-reflection, not to judge you. Anybody remembers what was that special event which happened, which indicated the transition from Balya to Pauganda? So what happens when a child becomes around 5 years old? What is the change? So I'm giving you a logical hint.
Primary education.
Yes. Going to school.
Yeah, thank you. So if you remember, we discussed that there was a Hate Khadi ceremony which Jagannath Mishra observed. Hate Khadi, Hath mein khada. Khada yani chalk. And the first alphabets was written. So Jagannath Mishra held the hand of Vishwambar Mishra and drew the alphabets. And we also discussed how very soon the Lord was very fast in learning. So that kind of augured in the pastimes of the Lord, moving out from a baby age. So when a child starts formally learning, he's considered a little bit more mature. So that is the beginning of the pastime, going on up to the age of 10. And the Pauganda Lila of the Lord, interestingly, concludes with the Lord's marriage. So marriage around 10, first marriage. So in those days, boys and girls would get married, much early in age. And there are a lot of reasons why. Today is not the day I want to discuss that. Some of you will think, oh, this is illegal. Lord Chaitanya did something illegal. Today's legality and morality is totally disconnected from the Lord's system and reality. Now, not that I'm promoting child marriage in today's age, so don't misunderstand that either. But I'm just saying that don't judge these transcendental pastimes. There's a reason in the culture for why it was done like that. Anyways, but that's the beginning of the education up to the Lord's marriage. Does anybody remember who did the Lord marry? We had discussed one pastime about this earlier, which gave a hint. What was the name of that damsel?
Lakshmi.
Very good. Thank you, Sridevi. Lakshmi. And she was the daughter of?
Vallabhacharya.
Very good. Yes. Okay. So that's briefly the 5 years to 10 years period. Now again, repeatedly Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami keeps saying that I'm giving a synopsis, an overview. In fact, this part of the Lord's pastime is also discussed in great detail in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Over 4 or 5 chapters in the Adi Khanda of Chaitanya Bhagavat. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is very clear that I'm giving a synopsis. I don't want to repeat all the details. So what we'll do is we'll go through the synopsis. There are some interesting philosophical points to note, which I will have a little bit of a discussion on, so we can understand those principles. And in some places where there are a few more details, I will try to narrate. These are very interesting, very sweet years of the Lord's manifest pastimes. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that at the very beginning of the chapter, he says that the main occupation of the Lord in this part of the pastime, Pauganda Lila, was essentially engaging himself in study. And of course, as we just mentioned, the conclusion of the pastimes was with the very, very beautiful marriage ceremony. So both of these aspects are going to be the focus. So it is said that the Lord was educated under a great Pandit by the name of Gangadas Pandit. Now, obviously, as we have discussed earlier, when the Lord is studying under some Pandit, some personality, obviously they are not ordinary, because when the Lord incarnates, his associates also incarnate. So we understand Gangadas Pandit to be an incarnation of, who's the Lord's teacher in Krishna Lila? Who's the Lord's teacher in Krishna Lila? Anybody remembers?
Sandipani.
Sandipani Muni. Thank you. So that's the incarnation of the Lord. So he has incarnated. So it is said that the Lord's basic education with respect to grammar was conducted under the guidance of Gangadas Pandit. Now, Gangadas Pandit ran what is known as a toll. Toll. Now, today's day, when we talk about toll, we think about a toll plaza, where car goes and pays toll. So, toll was a Bengali name for a school. I am going to the toll of so and so. So, for example, this is our online toll of Gaur Chandra Das. So, that was the original toll. Of course, Lord Chaitanya had not manifested his pastimes of running his own toll. That comes a little later. It comes not in Pauganda Lila, but in his Lila after the Pauganda, his Kaishora pastimes. Because the Lord started his own school at the age of 16, if I'm not wrong. So this is between 5 and 10. He opened his own toll, Gaura Chandra's original toll. This is Gaur Chandra Das toll. So toll is, in olden times, the system was there wouldn't be, big organizational educational institutes. So there would be a Brahmana teacher with a couple of assistant teachers, and they would set up a very simple school, like a small ashram. Not necessarily all these tolls. These tolls are not even ashrams in the sense that they were not necessarily residential quarters like what, Krishna and Balram went to the ashram of Sandipani Muni. So this was in the town. It's a school. Children come in the morning, spend their time in the day learning, and they go back to their home in the evening. This is the kind of the school that we're talking about. So in terms of Brahmana's education, obviously the first part of the education, now I'm just explaining, this are not given in verses so that you can appreciate and understand the concept. I'm explaining some background. And some of this is briefly covered in the purports as well. The first part of education is about the Sanskrit language itself. So Lord Chaitanya also, like all other students, they joined the toll of Gangadas Pandit because he was very, very reputed. I have already mentioned Navadvip was the high seat of learning in those days. It was the Harvard of learning for the whole world, not just for India. So he was learning grammar. It is said that Gangadas Pandit, in the first few years, the preliminary grammar and preliminary things, Gangadas Pandit did not personally instruct Nimai or Vishwambar. It was two of his assistants, if I remember their names correctly. One is Vishnu and one is Purandar, if I'm not wrong. I need to just double check the purpose. But there are two assistants. They taught him the very basic aspects of grammar. And Lord Chaitanya, being extremely brilliant as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whatever he was taught, he hears, done, finished. Because he would just absorb. Of course, the Lord already knows everything. But in his manifest Lila, he was Shrutidhar. Listens one time, done. And that's how education would be in the previous yugas. People would listen to something once and they would remember for the whole life. Actually, in Kali Yuga, it is a benediction to not remember everything for the whole life. Because we have 98% nonsense and 2% sense. Hopefully, we can remember only the 2% sense. Otherwise, it's always he spoke like this, he did like this. We will remember all those things only. So better we forget those things. So good memory also has benefits, good memory also has a problem. Anyway, so typically it is said, see, education in the Vedic concept, especially for Brahmanas, it means education of the Vedas. It's very simple. And the Vedic system is such that you don't directly go and study the Vedas. Why? Just like in school, right? We learn physics. We have all studied physics. Did we start with physics in KG? No, right? We first learn alphabets. We first learn numbers. We learn basic arithmetic. We learn basic aspects of language, numbers, calculations, concepts, diagrams. And then slowly we get, when we have enough knowledge of the basics, then we can articulate physics in terms of that understanding. Otherwise, we cannot jump in. So similarly, when a person learns Vedas, Vedas are written in Sanskrit. And there is a very elaborate system in which Vedas are to be read, understood, interpreted, and applied. Now, all this is not mentioned. I'm giving you background. This is good knowledge to have. So we're not really diverting from the topic, so you understand the context. It is said it takes 12 years to master Sanskrit grammar. Actually, not even master, sorry, I used the wrong word. To have adequate knowledge of Sanskrit to be able to study the Vedas. A mastery, I don't know. This Prabhupada says this at many places in the purports, in some of his classes also he says, and that's why he tells that in Kali Yuga, don't waste your time. 12 years to learn Sanskrit, after 12 years you will be missing. Maybe in 12 months you'll be missing. Because learning Sanskrit itself is not an easy task. So 12 years of learning Sanskrit, after one has learned Sanskrit, actually one not only learns Sanskrit, it is said, to learn the Vedas, there are 6 Vedangas which are supporting the learning of the Vedas. Veda Anga, limbs of the Vedas. So they are necessary to learn, not because they are Vedas themselves, but they are necessary to be learned, to be able to both understand and apply the Vedas in practice, both in theory and practice. Anybody knows what are the 6 Vedangas or a few of them? So one of them is Vyakaran. Vyakaran means grammar. So first you have to learn alphabet and grammar, because without that you cannot even read the verses and you cannot make out meaning from the verses. The second is Nirukta. Nirukta means, it's like, in a very simple word, it is etymology and the Vedic dictionary. Then there is Jyotish. Jyotish means it is to do with how the planetary movements are, astrology, astronomy, so that one can actually properly consider the time for the performance of various Vedic ceremonies. And then there is Kalpa. Kalpa is the detailed calculation of time. Nirukta we already discussed. Chanda is the phonetics. Phonetics means even when you have learned Sanskrit, when you are reciting the verses, you should know how to recite the verses. Just like we were discussing on the WhatsApp group, there is a diacritics in English, right? How to pronounce the words. Even within Sanskrit, even though Sanskrit to pronounce is clear, when we sing Sama Veda is to sing the various mantras which are in the Brahmanas. When we sing the shlokas, to create the proper potency, the mantras have to be recited in a particular way. The certain intonation is needed. There is a rule. You cannot just, put any tune you like. Nowadays, for Mahamantra also we put various. Of course, Mahamantra is okay, but we like to put whatever tunes are catchy, film song tunes and sing. We cannot do that with Vedic shlokas. We cannot do that. It will not give the right effect. So that is the science of Chanda. Sorry, Kalpa is about ritual. Sorry, my bad. Jyotish is about time. Kalpa is about ritual. And Shiksha, I forgot. Anybody remembers Shiksha? I think whether it's about ritual. I need to just look up. I'll later check that. If anybody can look up on
Shiksha,
the net.
Prabhuji, Shiksha is about phonetics and pronunciation.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. So Chanda is the meter and Shiksha is the phonetics. Thank you. Yes. So they work together. Actually, these are in pairs because Vyakaran and Nirukta are in pairs because Nirukta is the dictionary and Vyakaran is the grammar. Chanda and Shiksha is a pair because Chanda is the meter and Shiksha is the phonetics. Thank you. I'm brushing up what I learned long back. And Jyotish and Kalpa. Yeah, thank you. Yes, that is correct. Thank you, Amit. Amit is privately tutoring me, as you cannot see. So, yes, Nirukta includes etymology, but it goes beyond etymology into the full dictionary as well. Kalpa is the ritual, like I mentioned, and astronomy is Jyotish. So, all these aspects are important because without understanding all this, one cannot properly learn and execute Vedic study. So, Brahmanas would learn all these Vedangas, but you begin with Vyakaran because everything to learn first, if you don't understand grammar, what are you going to read from? And how are you going to even understand and apply? So 12 years for grammar. And then one starts learning various things. Then one comes to the Upanishad and then so much contemplation. So the path of a typical Brahmanical study, a strict Brahmanical study is actually very arduous. It is not a, and it's not just even about study. It is about leading and living pure lives and developing Brahmanical qualities as well. And practically all of these, very few books would be in written form. If you wanted a book in written form, do you know what you had to do? There was no photocopy, there was no book library, there was no online, Kindle book. One had to literally borrow a copy a handwritten copy of the book from someone and get the whole book copied manually by someone else. That's how books will be managed. Anyway, so this is the background. So 12 years, but Lord Chaitanya, why I'm mentioning this, Lord Chaitanya didn't have to need 12 years. Within a few months, he quickly completed what these first two preliminary teachers taught, and then for advanced grammar, he quickly went and he was being guided by Gangadas Pandit himself. So they were all very amazed that he became so expert in all the grammatical rules. See, Sanskrit grammar is not easy. The grammatical rules are, actually quite elaborate, to be honest. And there is a special book on Sanskrit grammar known as the Panjitika. And the Lord became expert in that book of Panjitika, and he would be commenting on the Panjitika. And he was so good at this kind of grammar and arguments of meanings based on the rules of grammar that he would enter into discussion and debates with other students and defeat them. He, even though he was in a lower class, he would argue with students in a much higher class, and he would defeat them in arguments. And this was the, early indications of the scholarly pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Lord was very, very scholarly. He would love in his early years, before he manifested his pastimes as a devotee, he would love to engage in debate, and he would love to show his knowledge. And the Lord did that because he wanted to establish his material reputation in such a way that so that when he becomes a devotee, that transformation will also be recognized. Correct? Yeah. For example, if today Dhirubhai Ambani becomes sannyasi, sorry, Dhirubhai is not around, Mukesh Ambani becomes a sannyasi, or any of the Tatas or Birlas becomes, then that is news. Oh, this billionaire became sannyasi. But if a poor or a middle class man gives up everything and becomes a sannyasi, it's not going to make great news, and he's not, even though he may be very renounced and very advanced, it doesn't make news. It doesn't make an appeal to the people in general. So the Lord actually displayed very extraordinary reputation, knowledge, wealth, attainment before he gave up all of this. And the Lord built up his reputation beginning with his studies. So there are many, many beautiful pastimes, how the Lord would go to different places and study. And he was like, consuming book after book after book, become very expert. In fact, he became so expert. There is one pastime it is mentioning. It's not mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's not mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavad. It's an anecdotal pastime, but it is quoted by devotees. So I'm going to just share. But again, I just want to put a disclaimer that there is this is accepted by most devotees, but not really directly from either Chaitanya Bhagavad or Chaitanya Charitamrita. The Lord Chaitanya was so expert that one time Lord Chaitanya himself, Nimai Pandit, himself wrote a book on Sanskrit grammar. Can you imagine? Book on grammar by God himself. So you may say, oh Prabhu, I want that book, I want that book. Where is that book? I want online downloadable PDF. So what happened? So the story is that book is no longer available. Now, what is the story of why that book is no longer available? So the story goes like this. So the Lord had many friends, and I don't remember the name of this Pandit. I forgot his name. He's also a very respectable, great personality. And I will tell you about him as we go along in this particular pastime. So one day the Lord and this particular friend, both were traveling in a boat going across the Ganges. Probably they were going to school or returning from school. I do not remember. So this particular friend of Lord, Vishwambhar, was also very learned scholar of Sanskrit. Because, that was the Harvard, right? And so all the students there are, the top of the top. So he was also very scholarly. And he had written a book on Sanskrit grammar. And he was a dear friend of Lord Chaitanya. So he wrote a book. And he told the Lord, Vishwambar, I have written a book. And Lord Chaitanya saw his book and he said, oh, very nice. And Vishwambar said, oh, I have also written a book. Can you please have a look at my book? So this particular Pandit, also a young boy, had a look at the book that Vishwambar had written, my Pandit had written. And after he saw that book, he started crying. The Lord asked him, why are you crying? He said, your book is so perfect. It is so good. It is so amazing that after seeing your book, I am convinced nobody will ever read my book. Because your book on the grammar far, far, far excels my book. So when the Lord's friend just expressed his emotion like that, Lord Vishwambar told him, oh, is that all? Such a small thing. The Lord Vishwambar took his book, his handwritten copy of that book, and he just dumped it into the Ganges. He said, yes, now no longer your book will be the second best. Going forward, your book will be the authority on grammar. That is the amazing renunciation of the Lord. How many of us will do like this for our friend? And that is how the most perfect book on grammar was created and dissolved within a short period of time. So probably other than that one devotee associate of the Lord, whoever he is, I do not remember his name. His book is considered, I have read somewhere, that even up to this day as one of the top books on Sanskrit grammar. Anyway, so that was a very interesting pastime. So that was the character of the Lord. How much the Lord loves and how much he is affectionate towards his devotees. So all these pastimes of the Lord would go on even as he would study and he would be walking here and there. He would always be challenging his friends in terms of grammatical discussions. He would quote one verse and he would ask them for a meaning. And then the Lord would, they would give a meaning and the Lord would counter that, defeat that interpretation, argument, give his own explanation or argument based on logic and all grammatical rules, and all his friends would be impressed. Wow, Nima, you are so brilliant. Actually, what you said is correct. This is the correct application of grammar rules. We were wrong in our understanding or the application of principles of grammar and logic. It was not only grammar, it was grammar and logic. And the Lord would then, after having established his position, he would then defeat his own position with more deeper logic and grammatical rules. Say, no, I was wrong. This is the correct understanding. Then he would defeat all the arguments he had previously established and establish a higher point. This is far out. Yes. Amazing. And the Lord would again, one more round, defeat that argument and establish another principle. And that would go on. And people would be, like, the Lord's knowledge and erudition was so extraordinary that the other students, and not to what to speak of students, even the other scholars would be at their wits' end, and because they could not fathom the erudition of the Lord, who is actually the Supreme Personality. So like that, many, many beautiful pastimes. I'm not going into too much detail. We don't have that much time. So one pastime is also mentioned. It is said one day Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Mother Sachi and requested her that I beg you, oh Mother, I beg you, please, please, please give me one charity. I am asking one thing from you, sir. Yeah, my dear son, whatever you ask, I have always given. Please ask, what is it? You know what the Lord said? Oh Mother, I just have one request for you. And And that request is, please do not eat grains on Ekadashi day. So please observe Ekadashi. So the mother said that, yes, you have spoken correctly. Going forward, I will not eat grains. So she started observing fasting on Ekadashi. Now, some of you may wonder that why she was not already observing fasting on Ekadashi. And that thought is not normal to come. So Prabhupada explains in the purports that actually, according to scriptural injunctions, everybody is supposed to abstain from fasting or fasting on Ekadashi as fasting from grains. But somehow, sometimes, in certain cultures, in certain societies, certain rules evolve which are not scriptural based, but just social customs. So in those days, it used to be common for ladies, only ladies who were widows, they would follow Ekadashi. And those who had their husbands alive, it was considered inauspicious to give up grains. Just as a social, it is not mentioned how that understanding evolved, but sometimes, these kind of understandings evolve and people just think that this is the scriptural standard, but it is not. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to correct that, and that is why he, instructed his mother that no, you must follow. You do not follow that social convention, but follow the proper standard of the scriptures. Now, another thing would happen as the Lord was growing up and studying. If you recollect, the Lord had an elder brother. Anybody remembers the name of the Lord's elder brother?
Vishwarupa.
Yes, thank you. Vishwarupa. So Vishwarupa himself was also very, very learned, very brilliant, very qualified, very wonderful, great. Of course, as we discussed, he's an expansion of Lord Sankarshan. Even as Lord Chaitanya was, learning in school and doing his naughty pastimes, Vishwarupa was very, very different. Even though this is not mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, I'm just adding a bit from other books. Vishwarupa was a very, very gentle, well-behaved, he was the kind of boy that, every parent will want. Very gentle, very obedient, very studious, very devotional. So he was very dear to Jagannath Mishra and Sachimata. Now, Vishwarupa, being very sober, regularly he would go and associate within Navadip with other great devotees such as Advaita Acharya, Srivas Thakur, and a few others, because many of these devotees would come together. And as we discussed in the previous classes, Advaita Acharya especially was the leader of all these devotees and Brahmanas, and he together with others would have Bhagavatam discussions, Bhagavad Gita discussions, and Vishwarupa would often come and attend all these classes. Vishwarupa was very, very absorbed in bhakti. He had absolutely no attraction for material life. Getting a job, getting married, having a family was, the last thought on his mind. He was just thinking about how to absorb himself fully in Krishna consciousness. He would, in fact, it is not mentioned here, it is mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavad. So sorry, as I'm recollecting some past times, I'm just trying to sprinkle a bit here and there. I may not be very exhaustive. It is described in the books that oftentimes Vishwarupa would be so busy in discussing Harikatha with Advaita and others that he would forget even to come for lunch. Sometimes even forget to come for dinner home. From morning, after his bathing and morning duties, he would go there and he would come back only in the evenings, sometimes very late. So Sachimata would often ask little Nimai, either his, Bali or maybe in his early Pauganda years, that, oh Nimai, oh Vishwambar, go and call your elder brother. Where is he? He has not come for lunch. We are waiting for him for lunch. Go and look for him. So little Vishwambar would run and go to the house of Advaita Acharya. Apparently, Advaita Acharya had one home in Shantipur. He also had a few other homes. One of the homes was also very close to the home of Lord Chaitanya. And was also mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita in the purports. So he would go And as all these Vaishnavas would be sitting discussing Harikatha, this little transcendental boy, young, 5 to 7 year old, would come running in, calling his elder brother. I don't know what he was saying, maybe Dada, Dada, whatever. Calling his elder brother. He would come in, and all these devotees would be so absorbed in remembering the Lord. And suddenly, this very, very beautiful, charming form of Vishwambar comes into that room. And everyone would be charmed. They would feel the kind of happiness that they would feel if they were seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. Because they were actually seeing the Supreme Lord face to face. But none of these devotees could understand, because being covered by the Lord's Yogmaya potency, they could not understand that this Vishwambar is whom they are discussing about. So he would come and ask, and he would come to his brother Vishwambar and say, oh, my dear brother, Mother Sachi is calling you, please come home, please come home. And he would say, yeah, I'm just coming. And then, Vishwambar would go back. Then again, Mother Sachi would send him. He's not yet come. Another hour has passed. Another 2 hours have passed. He would go and he would again pull on the dhoti of Vishwarup. Please come, Mother Sachi is calling. And sometimes he would pull and take him back. So sweet pastimes. And the devotees would be so amazed seeing this Vishwambar, but they would not be able to figure out who this personality is, because they are not understanding that he is actually the object of their meditation, the object of their service. So Vishwarup was like that. He was thoroughly retired. So as Vishwarup came of age, of course, probably in his early teens only, I would think so, even though the age is not mentioned, the parents started thinking, now Vishwarup is, a young boy. So now we should find a suitable girl for him and arrange for his marriage. So when the news reached the ears of Vishwarup that marriage is being planned for him, in olden times it was not so much of dating and meeting. The parents would look for a girl and check astrology and done. So when Vishwarup heard this, he felt that he did not want to get entangled in samsara. So when he heard this, very quietly, without telling anyone, Vishwarup practically immediately left home and took sannyas. Unknown to anybody. Nobody knew where he went. Mother Sachi did not know. At an external level, Lord Vishwambar did not know, Jagannath Mishra did not know, even the associates there did not know, because he did not tell anybody, just left. He took sannyas and he was traveling from one place of pilgrimage to another. Sachi Mata and Jagannath Mishra, when they found about that their elder son Vishwarupa had departed like this, had taken sannyas, they became very, very unhappy. They became very despondent. But Lord Chaitanya was trying to console them. He would tell his parents, oh, my dear parents, oh, my dear mother and father, actually it is very good. Why are you so sad? To take sannyas is actually so wonderful. Just by taking sannyas and dedicating oneself to the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, my elder brother Vishwarup has delivered his relatives on his father's side as well as his mother's side. So this is the great benediction in the scriptures. When somebody has devoted himself exclusively to sannyas, exclusively to service of the Lord. Because ultimately, what is sannyas about? And Prabhupada explains this very in a detailed manner in the purport, and I'm going to mention this very briefly because of shortage of time. That when we talk about sannyas, actually, generally in Kali Yuga, sannyas is said to be one of the things which is to be avoided. But this doesn't apply to Vaishnava sannyas, because Vaishnava sannyas is not karma sannyas. Karma sannyas means one just gives up on some material duty and thinks of oneself as transcendental. And that is not the teachings of the Gita and the Bhagavad. True sannyas means cessation from all activities of material enjoyment. Kamyanam karmanam nyasa. This is definition given of sannyas, kamyanam karmanam nyasa. Anybody remembers? This is definition of sannyas. The definition means stopping all activities which are materially motivated towards one's own personal enjoyment, which effectively means sannyas means stopping materialistic activities and fully devoting oneself to the service of the Supreme Personality of God. Anybody remembers?
Introduction of Bhagavad Gita.
Which chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is this verse? I'm talking about this verse.
Chapter 18, Prabhu.
Yes, thank you, Prabhu. The perfection of renunciation. Chapter 18. Where Krishna asks, what is the meaning of sannyas? What is tyaga? Sarva karma phala tyaga is tyaga. And kamyanam karmanam nyasa. So ultimately, sannyas means giving up activities for sense enjoyment and dedicating all one's activities exclusively for the praja of the Supreme Lord. That is the ultimate meaning of sannyas. But Prabhupada strongly condemns those people who take sannyas and add on saffron robes simply to beg and make it as a means of livelihood. But those who are not dedicating their mind-body activities to the service of the Supreme Personality of God. True sannyas means dedicating oneself fully. And that is why any individual who has dedicated his life 100% is as good as a sannyasi from our perspective, from a Vaishnava perspective. They may be a brahmachari, they may be grahastha, vanaprastha. But the perfection of sannyas is the renunciation of, is the giving up of activities which are selfish motivated and exclusively being engaged in the Lord's. So that is the meaning of sannyas. So he's saying, this is wonderful. Anybody who's dedicated exclusively to the Lord's service is delivering. The Bhagavatam says that, and that is what Lord Narsingha tells Prahlad, your 21 generations are liberated because you are fully, exclusively devoted soul. If one becomes a first-class devotee, one's 21 generations are liberated. If one becomes an intermediate devotee, one's 14, if I'm not wrong, generations are liberated. And or 11, I don't remember exactly. And if one is a neophyte devotee, one's 3 generations are liberated. But if one is just taking sannyas for name only, he cannot even liberate himself. What to speak about others. So Lord Chaitanya is purifying, he's telling his parents, don't worry. And Vishwarupa has gone, but I am here. Vishwambhar is telling them, I will take care of you. I will serve you. And somehow the Lord pacified. So at least Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Mata felt that, yes, this very, very loving boy, this Vishwambhar is going to be with us. He is going to be taking care of us. He will remain with us. That was a big consolation. Little did they know that not too distant in the future, Vishwambhar will also follow suit. At this point, the Lord was not contemplating sannyas. Of course, the Lord ultimately knows everything, but from his manifest Lila, he was not at all thinking of taking sannyas. The Lord took the decision of sannyas after much, much deliberation because he was so concerned about Mother Sachi. Because what happened was, soon after this actually, Jagannath Mishra left this world, and then Sachi Mata was alone, and only Vishwambhar, Lord Chaitanya, and Sachi Mata were there. And the whole responsibility of taking care of the elderly mother rested on the shoulders of Vishwambhar. But even in that very, very difficult situation, the Lord ultimately had to take that decision for the sake of delivering conditioned souls like us. So that's the Lord's very, very special compassion. So we'll come to those pastimes. Those pastimes are described further ahead. I'll not go into those details right away. So in that way, the Lord consoled. It is said one day, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said he ate betel nuts, supari, which was offered to the deity. It was prasad. And after he ate the betel nut, he acted as if he was intoxicated with the betel nut. And the Lord, in his pastimes, fell on the ground unconscious. Now, this is very amazing. We haven't heard of anybody eating betel nut and falling unconscious. But the Lord manifested this pastime. And after this happened, the father and mother being so worried about Vishwambar, they came and they sprinkled water on his face and they tried to revive. And the Lord came back to his external consciousness, and Vishwambar seemed very excited and he started describing, oh, something wonderful happened, something wonderful happened. And the parents asked, what? Please tell us. He said that when I fell unconscious, I had this amazing vision that Vishwaroop, my elder brother, he came here to our house, and he came and he was trying to take me away from home, and he told me, come, Vishwambar, you also come and take sannyas. You also come and take sannyas. I told Vishwaroop, Vishwambar is narrating to his parents, that in this vision, I told Vishwaroop, oh, I have my helpless father and mother. How can I take sannyas? Also, I'm just a small child. What do I understand about sannyas? I just want to take care of my parents, so I'm going to later become a grihastha and I will serve my parents. Because I think if I perform my duties in this way, then Lord Narayan and Lakshmi Devi will be very pleased with me. So when I explained like this to Vishwarupa, Vishwarupa also understood the situation, and Vishwarupa also said yes. He agreed with Vishwambar's explanation, and he left Lord Chaitanya back at the home, and he left back as a sannyasi. He continued on his way. Just as Vishwarupa was departing, Vishwarupa tells Vishwambar in that vision that please convey my thousands and thousands of obeisances unto Mother Sachi. That I am still feeling so indebted to my parents for all that they have done for me. So in that way, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains, and that way he consoled his parents, and in some way perhaps also gave some hints. Krishnadas Gavaraj Goswami at this point in the Chaitanya Charitamrita makes a very interesting comment. He says the Lord acted in this way. I have described that he has done, but why exactly he did like this, I cannot understand. So if Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami cannot understand, then what to speak of us, and so I am also not going to try to give any rationalization here. Prabhupada also explains that sometimes why the Lord does a particular thing, or for that matter, what to speak of the Lord, why even pure devotees act in a particular way, which may sometimes be controversial, sometimes be, appear erratic. It's very, very, very difficult to understand. Prabhupada quotes the verse, which is also from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra Vidnera Nabhujaya. That one cannot understand the activities and the inner mind of a pure devotee. And that is why one should not hastily try to judge a pure devotee's activity and pass criticism and complaints and judgments against them. That will be to our detriment. So one must be very, very careful. What to speak of the Lord? One must be careful not to judge. Some people, they are quick to judge and pass judgment. Oh, why Lord Ram did like this? He shouldn't have done like this. They become quality analysts of Lord Ram's pastime. Lord Ram is Maryada Purushottam. And they are Naradham, lowest of the low, but they want to be quality analyst of Supreme Personality of God. Shouldn't have actually. Ram was okay, but he should have fixed this part of his pastime. If he had consulted me, I would have advised him. That kind of attitude is there. So this kind of foolishness we should not do. Some of these activities, why exactly the Lord does, what is his purpose? These are very, very deep matters which may not even be revealed in the pastimes. Such matters may be known to very, very, very few individuals, and they may not be revealed to the public. And that is why we must not be judgmental, or we must not demand that everything be explained and understood by us perfectly by mundane logic before we will accept it. We must have faith based on the acharyas and based on the transcendental position of the Lord, that the Lord always acts in such a way which is for the welfare of everyone connected. That faith is important for all of us to have. When the Lord performs his pastimes, what to speak of this? Any pastimes that the Lord performs, We know such a small percentage of what is being performed. Even in the smallest of gestures and the smallest of things the Lord do, even the Lord just casting a glance over 10,000 people sitting, the Lord will interact with the 10,000 potentially in different ways and interact and perform so many Leelas just by through that glance and convey so many things through that glance. The Lord's potency is absolutely inconceivable. So we can actually know very, very little. Whatever the Lord and the Acharyas have revealed, that is wonderful. But there may be so many things we may not understand. So this is a very interesting pastime. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami then mentions that soon after all these episodes happened, Jagannath Mishra was already feeling very sad because of Vishwarup's passing away. Vishwarup's taking sannyas, and Jagannath Mishra untimely, he passed away from this world and went back to the spiritual world. Both Vishwambhar and Mother Sachi were very, very aggrieved. All the friends, relatives, the village people, they all came and tried to console Lord Chaitanya and his mother. Because Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of God. But nonetheless, in the role of a Brahmana, he performed the last rites of his father according to the Vedic system. Now, these are important things to notice. Sometimes, we feel that, oh, I have become such a great devotee. In one sense, when we become very advanced in devotion, all these material rituals and obligations are not necessary. But that is usually at a very advanced level. We at our level should not claim ourselves to be transcendental. Whatever are our obligatory duties according to our ashram and varna, we must perform. Whether Shraddha ceremony or any other ceremony, we must perform. We must not put a transcendental tag, self-certification. Because if we are failing in our transcendental duties and we neglect our material duties, then we become implicated by sin. We must be careful about this. It is always better to take a humble position and execute our duties. Krishna himself says, I do duties even though I don't need to. Even great souls, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, even though they are transcendental, they don't need, they still execute duties just to set the right example. So the Lord performed this. So this is a good example for all of us. We must perform the respective obligatory duties. The Pinda, Udaga, prayers for the deceased. These obligatory duties as per our ashram and our work limits all performed. So after some time, after the father passed away, by that time Lord Chaitanya was not even married. The father passed away, Vishwarup had gone, Vishwambhar is, an excellent student, but still a bachelor. And Mother Sachi is alone, a widow. And after some days, Lord Chaitanya started to think to himself, I have decided not to take sannyas for now. I need to take care of my mother. I am at home. But if I am at home, I cannot remain not married because that is not the proper behavior. Either one should take a sannyas or one must enter Grihastha ashram. That is the proper duty. Prabhupada would say that do not try to become bachelor daddy. Prabhupada coined this term, bachelor daddy. And bachelor daddy means those people, those who want to just be free. I don't want any responsibility. I don't want responsibility of children. I don't want responsibility of a wife. But I want to enjoy all the perks of female association, but I don't want the responsibilities that come with it, either with the spouse or with the children. So I want Ardha Kukkutanyaya. I want the facilities, but I don't want the duties. So this is considered a fault. Because the reality is like what is explained in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. There's a system of yajna. You cannot take from the system without paying back. If you take from the system and don't pay back, you become implicated in karma. Unless a person is fully surrendered and devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes implicated. This is a fact. Prabhupada has explained this multiple times, and this is a very, very clear fact. One must be very careful. One should not place oneself in a transcendental position and, be neglectful of one's material obligation and duties, one will be implicated, one will be punished. Guaranteed. And that is because that's the law. I mean, that's how the system is designed by the Lord himself. So the Lord was thinking, no, I must, take Grihastha ashram properly. And then in that way, I can perform my duties properly as a Grihastha. And a part of those duties, I will take care of my mother. And then, my wife can also assist me in my household duties. Because the whole idea of Grihastha ashram is that the wife and the husband come together, not for the purpose of enjoying together, but the purpose of helping each other to perform their religious and spiritual duties, and in that way grow together and also take care of each other materially and protect each other from any material fall down. Lord Chaitanya was thinking to himself that without a wife, there is no meaning to Grihastha life. Grihastha means being situated in a home, not in a house, in a home. Grihastha. House anybody can buy, but the house needs to be converted to a home. The house becomes a home when there is Grihini. Grihini means when one has a wife. I mean, now I'm talking from the perspective of Lord Chaitanya or from the perspective of a male. So when there is a marriage, then the house becomes a home. Then only I can properly execute my householder duties. So I must now enter Grihastha ashram. So the Lord started thinking like that. Without a wife, there is no meaning to the word home. Because if Lord Chaitanya was thinking that if a husband and wife are staying together in one's home and supporting each other in Krishna consciousness, then they can achieve all the goals of the human form of life. Artha, Dharma, Kama, Moksha, and ultimately Bhakti. So that's why Grihastha ashram by itself is not condemned. Griha Medhi life is condemned. What does Griha Medhi mean? Griha Medhi means where the focus of the home is simply for the satisfaction of one's own materialistic desires. That is a Griha Medhi life. But Grihastha life means where the members of the family come together, keeping Krishna in the center, serving the Lord, and both helping each other, worship the Lord, serve the devotees, follow the instructions of the spiritual master. Such kind of a life is glorified in the Shastras. It is not condemned. So again, it is not a must that everyone has to take sannyas. In fact, in Kali Yuga, practically sannyas is, you can say, almost impossible. And for those whom it is possible, it is 0.00001%. At least in this group, most of us are either married or, there is very little chance that any of us will take sannyas, at least for now. I don't know, after 50 years, 60 years, if any of you take sannyas. That avenue is there, an unlikely avenue, but that's an option Grihasthas can avail of later on in their life. But Grihastha life, which is properly focused on serving the Lord, is glorified. It is very wonderful. And there are great pure devotees among Grihasthas, there are great pure devotees among sannyasis, there are great pure devotees amongst brahmacharis. Narad Muni is brahmachari. The 4 Kumaras are brahmacharis. Who attained perfection was a brahmachari, when he was a brahmachari. Prahlad attained perfection even when he was a brahmachari. And the early stage of that. So actually attaining perfection is not dependent on one's ashram. As long as one is properly situated in the ashram and performing the duties properly, one can make proper spiritual. So why I'm mentioning this is we do not have to be worried or overly concerned that we are in Grihastha ashram. We must be very careful to make sure we do not degrade into Griha Medhi life. By keeping the Lord in the center of our home, by worshipping Him regularly, by using our lives, our family, our positions in whatever way possible for the service of the Lord, one can actually ensure that one's life doesn't become a Griha Medi life, but actually becomes a proper Grihastha. So the Lord was thinking like this. So as he was contemplating, see, the Lord is like this. No? Once the Lord thinks, for us, when we think, then we have to write down a plan. Okay, now I need to do this. Then we have to execute it, do so many things, get failed and frustrated 100 times. Then only things may happen. But the Lord is Apta Kama, and he is Satya Sankalpa. Satya Sankalpa is when the Lord thinks he wants something. All his energies start working to make it happen. Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyate Swabhaviki Jnana Balakriya. That is the Lord's potency. For the Lord, everything is effortless. So as the Lord was thinking like this, automatically through the arrangement of Yog Maya, one day the Lord was coming back from school. Accidentally, he saw the daughter of Vallabhacharya, Lakshmi Devi, on his way to the Ganges. I think this must be the second time, because once he had already seen, and you remember, he asked her to worship him. Again, when they saw each other, again their loving affection for each other awakened. And coincidentally, of course, there's no coincidence, but from an external perspective, coincidentally, in the town of Navadip, there was a marriage maker. In olden times, there would be marriage makers. There would be certain individuals, elderly ladies or men in the community who would be specialists to find out this boy, this girl, this boy, matchmaking. So if somebody wants to know, oh, is there a suitable girl for my boy, they would not put matrimonial advertisement. They would go to these matchmakers and ask them, oh, is there any? And they would have the database in their minds of all these people who are, suitable. So it is said there was a Brahmana, a very pure-hearted Brahmana by the name of Vanamali Ghatak, who came to Sachi Mata just as all these thoughts were happening, and after the Lord again saw Lakshmi Devi, he came to the house of Sachi Mata, and he came with the proposal of Lakshmi Devi for Vishwambar. Now that pastime is also described in great detail. We don't have time. Oh, we have already exceeded the time. I'm so sorry. Another 3-4 minutes. So that also we can discuss for 10-15 minutes. The details of those incidents are described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. But I'll mention in brief. Essentially, he comes and he says that, actually Sachi Mata had also asked Vanmali Ghatak that, please look for a good match for my son. He said, yes. And then he looks around, and then he comes across Vallabhacharya, talks to Vanmali Ghatak, and he says, I need a qualified boy. And Vanmali Ghatak tells this Vallabhacharya that the most suitable boy for your very, very qualified, your daughter is as good as the goddess of fortune. And the only person whom I think qualified is the son of Jagannath Mishra, who is Vishwambar. He's the most learned, he's the best, he is so wonderful. And Vallabhacharya is so happy with this recommendation of Vanamali Ghatak, who's doing the matchmaking. And says, yes, we take our proposal and go to the house of Sachi Mata. So he actually formally brings the proposal by the request of Vallabhacharya. And the interesting episode is, it's not mentioned here, but it's mentioned, I think, in Chaitanya Bhagavat. He comes and he tells Sachi Mata, and at that time, Nimai is not at home. And Sachi Mata says, oh, yes, this Lakshmi Devi, daughter of Allah, this is very wonderful. I think this is a very good proposal. Immediately, she becomes very happy. But she doesn't want to immediately agree to the proposal. She wants to take consent of Vishwambar, Lord Chaitanya, whether he is willing to get married. So later she opens the topic to Vishwambar and says that such and such a proposal has come. I think that now you should get married. And such and such a proposal has come. And the Lord very graciously gives his consent. Of course, he gives the consent also in a way that, oh mother, it will be good for you. I can understand you are alone. You also need help in your household duties to take care of, all the household duties. So it will also be good for you. In that way, the Lord, actually accepts the proposal. And then Mother Sachi becomes very, very happy. She immediately calls for Vanamali Ghatak and he gives the good news. She gives the good news and she says, yes, we accept the proposal. Please go and tell Vallabhacharya. And then, of course, the families meet and a very, very wonderful marriage ceremony of Lord Vishwambhar and Lakshmi Devi is organized. And that also is described in great detail. We don't have time for that. Maybe one day we should go through Chaitanya Bhagavad and all the details, because the details are also very, very sweet. But we don't have time for that today. So one thing I want to mention before we conclude, we have come to the conclusion of the chapter, because with the marriage, the Pauganda Lila winds up. Who is this Vanmali Ghatak? So Prabhupada also mentions in the purpose, he says that this Vanmali Ghatak is actually the matchmaker's role was performed in Lord Ramachandra's Lila by Vishwamitra Muni. So Vishwamitra Rishi, he took Ramchandra to Mithila, and that's where Ramchandra broke the bow, and he kind of was the intermediate to make the marriage possible. And that same Vishwamitra in the Lila of Krishna, he took the role of the Brahmana who became the intermediary to carry the message of Rukmini from Rukmini to Krishna, where Rukmini writes that letter to Krishna, I am going to be snatched away by Shishupal, please come and help me and deliver me. So the Brahmana who takes that message to Krishna is also the same person who was Vishwamitra, then that Brahmana, and then the same person has appeared in Lord Chaitanya's Lila as Vanmali Ghataka. So these personalities, they have multiple forms, they come across multiple Leelas. These are all eternal associates of the Lord. So that's also an interesting point to note. And in that way, the Lord actually, around the age of 10, he moved from his Brahmachari ashram to Grihastha ashram. Shri Vishwambhara Bhagavan ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Krishnas Kaviraj Goswami, as usual, concludes the chapter by saying, praying at the lotus feet of Rupa and Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. So this was a brief synopsis of the pastimes of the Pauganda Lila. If there are any questions or comments I can take before we conclude for the day.
Prabhuji, one question I have.
Yes, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, you spoke about the duties as a householder that we need to perform sometimes, family duties or duties which are mentioned for householders, right? But sometimes we kind of feel that the duties are kind of more ritual based, or based on some traditions which may not be exactly mentioned in the Vedas or maybe in the scriptures, right? So how do we then differentiate in that situations, and should we go ahead and do that still because it's kind of a family obligation to do?
So like what I mentioned, there will be some customary things which may not be scriptural requirements, like what Sachimata was eating grains on Ekadashi because that was the custom. So these kind of things we have to be mindful that we don't have to get trapped by these kind of imposed, imagined expectations of the community. But what we are talking about here is the duties based on our ashram as the scriptures expect. So what this means in very simple words, based on our different relationships, we have so many obligations. We have obligations to our parents. We have debts, right? We have these various rina. We have the rin to our parents, to our ancestors, to the society, to the rishis, to so on and so forth, correct? To the devas, to the rishis. So all these rinas we are supposed to pay back because we are obligated. We are taking benefit. So if we don't pay back the rinas by performing our duties and whatever is obligated for us according to our varna and ashram, according to the design. Now I don't want to go into the detail of what that is, But that's for us to take active guidance from the spiritual master and our spiritual teachers, what that means for us in today's term. But if we are not, for example, very simple things. Let me talk about very simple things, not even about yajna ceremonies. For us, of course, we are not recommended to perform so many yajnas. For us, if we chant the holy name, for us, that is the essence of all yajnas. But rituals such as, especially with respect to Shraddha, these kind of things are considered very important. Krishna also, Arjuna especially mentions this in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita also as one of his big concerns. So we should perform that, and I mentioned about that. But other than that, when we worship Hari properly, all the devatas become worshipped. Of course, there is no harm if we worship the devatas in the proper spirit. But it is not necessary for us to go on performing various ritualistic duties otherwise. But I'm talking about the depths also in terms of, this is talking about the Devarin. The Devarin can be taken care by worshipping Lord Hari directly. But what about Pitrurin? Pitrurin is taken care of by worshipping the ancestors, doing the Shraddha. What about Rin to one's parents? So taking care of elderly parents, taking care of children, taking care of society, dependents. So there is duty everywhere. So the principle is, some of these duties are simply, if we think logically, we will figure out, that I have taken from here, I have to pay back. So neglecting that basically means that we become obligated. For example, when we take a body, we become obligated to the parents, correct? But we cannot prepay back, right? We cannot prepay because we don't even have a body. We have to first take a body. So it's a prepaid, it's a postpaid billing. You consume the service first and then you pay for it. It's not prepaid, it's postpaid. When you go to heaven, it is prepaid. But when you take a body, it is postpaid. So you have to pay the bill. So there are certain ways in which you pay back for each of the relationships. In a marriage, there is certain obligatory duties for the husband to protect the wife and take care and provide for her. I'm talking in a more traditional setting, and for a wife to serve and remain chaste and serve the family. So when one fails in these duties, one becomes implicated that one has taken the benefit but not paid back. Then one is karmically implicated, and then one has to suffer. When one truly becomes fully surrendered to the Lord, yes, it is true that one becomes free from all material duties. So that is true. But we cannot imagine that we are already on that stage and dump all our duties. The problem is people are eager to abandon their duties out of laziness or not so convenient by calling themselves, I am devotee, I am beyond all this. So this kind of self-declaration doesn't make one transcendental. It will still make one implicated. That's the point. So going back to a very specific question with respect to so many rituals, you make your own judgment. It is not that you cannot do it. As long as it is not against Vaishnava principles, you can do it. But you have to ask yourself, is it really necessary to be engaged in this? Is it really an obligatory duty for me to perform? And if you are in doubt, ask the seniors what is the right thing to do in a specific situation.
Sure. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Okay. There's nothing else. We'll conclude for today. So about Saturday, again, I'll let you know later in a couple of days whether it's possible or not. If not, we will do our Tuesday class for some time. And then we'll resume Saturday probably after the New Year.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Samavita.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you, everyone.
Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Jai Ho.